order, and seeing as our good friend Secretary Teddy Boy Locsin is here. I should call him Teddy Man already because he's been.
There he is. There he is. He cannot resist.
And having said that, I would like to greet all of my fellow senators here today. Senator Pimentel, Senator Marcos, the ever-present and ever-active Senator Marcos, and who else is there? Charlene, who else are the other senators present?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. So far, it's Senator Marcos, Senator
Yeah, Tony Morales is
Can you
there.
speak a little louder? Like I said in the other meeting this morning, your mask is very formidable.
Oh, wait.
Hi, Tony.
I just had to go home, so I'm okay.
I understand, Secretary Locsin, I understand. Okay, shall we have all the folks here. Very, very quickly, you have Yusek Morales. Raise your hand, please. There you go. Yusek Dulay. Brigida Dulay. Okay. Yusek Lourdes Iparagire. That's a tongue twister for name. Iparagire. All right. Okay. Lady. All right. Yusek Ernesto Abelia. Okay. Yusek Sarah Lu Ariola. Somebody I know from the Blue Ribbon Days. Sarah, are you there?
She's there. I just saw her.
Are you cold, Sarah? You look like you are in fur.
Sir, no, it's barong.
Barong ba yan? Okay, sorry. And then you have Asad Gina Hamuralin. Asad Hamuralin.
Good afternoon.
Can you raise your hand, please? Okay, you've got the advantage because, well, I cannot see you. Asad Enrico Fos. FOS.
There he is.
That's the name doesn't correspond to another FOS. Just kidding, just kidding. Don't get your blood pressure up. Deputy ASEC Charlotte Tang. Charlotte? Don't go hush hush on me, Charlotte. Okay. There you go. ASEC Raul Hernandez. I've known this gentleman for a long time. Raul, are you there? Either sound off or raise your hand. Raul Hernandez is not answering. Martin not here. ASEC Myla Grace Makahilig. Can you please answer as well? ASEC Grace Cruz Fabelia.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Sanctifying Grace, is it? All right. Jaime Victor Leda. Ambassador Leda. Mao Yusek, ASEC Leda. Are you there? ASEC Leda. Okay, maybe it's not yet around, but we'll later on. By the way, I did not invite you all here. I think it's the secretary brought you all here as a security blanket, like Secretary Duque brings the whole, and then we're blamed for allowing us to, for bringing them all to our hearings. Go ahead. I'm sure Secretary Locsin can answer every question that we have on this earth.
No, that's why I brought them along.
Asek Bandillo. Asek Bandillo, are you there? Asik Bandillo. All right. Absent. Eduardo Menes. Menes? Who is
Present, sir. Present.
Menes or Menes?
Menes, sir.
All right. There was another Menes.
Present, Your Honor.
A long time ago. Asek Igor
Bandilio,
Bailen.
sir. Here.
Okay, there you go.
Yes, yes, here.
Mr. Bandillo. All right. Okay. And the other one raising his hand is?
Good afternoon, sir. Your Honors, Igor Bailen here.
Okay, Igor. Sounds very Russian. All right. Foreign Service Institute Director General Jose Maria Carino.
Present, sir. I'm present, sir.
Yes, okay. Are you sure your name is not Jose Carino Brutal?
No, sir. Jose Maria Carino.
Operation Council of the Philippines Chairperson Lilibet de la Pera?
Present, sir.
Ayan, maraming pera ito.
Present po.
Lilibet,
Opo,
no?
sir.
Galing pa sa Diyos. Dea Pera, alright? And then National Commission of the Philippines, UNESCO, Ernesto C. Abelia. I think I called his name earlier. Mr. Abelia?
Yes. Over here, sir. Your Honor.
And then Presidential Commission on Visiting Forces, Pedro Cesar Rambuanga from Zamboanga. Is that by
Present, sir, present.
I know he's from Zamboanga. Rambuanga. Is that are you there?
Yes, sir, I have some relatives there, sir.
There you are. I can see you now. The shining paint, right? Shining path, and you have shining paint.
Nice.
Okay, I'm just trying to lighten the load here. Good morning, good afternoon, my fellow citizens, my fellow senators. You know, I'm just going to read this because it's we're running in order to stay in place. Foreign relations are is quintessential importance to the Filipino people. The Filipino people have flourished well in the global economy, so some people claim. The world is long dependent and will continue to depend on Filipino labor and talent on account of 2.2 million overseas Filipino workers, 10.3 million Filipino immigrants, and the 1.2 million outsourced workers working within the Philippines. I don't think that should be our focus of our foreign policy, but unfortunately, poverty is an absence of choice, and the DFA has to handle all the people who have no choice but to go abroad. And it's a big task, and I don't envy you. The Philippines, by virtue of its geographical location and affiliations, is in the front lines of the chronic tension in the West Philippine Sea. Well, where we could possibly soon escalation of conflict between two Chinas. And I know they'll get mad at me. One China is big China, and the other one is Taiwan. We also have a strong record of giving humanitarian assistance and aid in providing safe haven for refugees fleeing from war-torn areas. And I commend, even though some people are bashing him, I don't think we should bash him because we have a record of bringing in international displaced persons or refugees to our country. The Afghans, I don't know, I've not seen any Afghans so far, but anyway, I support that. We have opened our doors and extended our world-renowned hospitality to the Jews right before Mr. Hitler or Herr Hitler took over Germany, the Vietnamese after the debacle in Vietnam, the Rohingyas in Myanmar, and now the Afghans. Filipino domestic politics may be divisive at times, but our foreign policy must always be firm. No permanent friends, only permanent interests. United and well thought out, and that is what President John Kennedy once said. Must be consistent, firm, united, and well thought out. Domestic policy can only defeat us. Foreign policy can kill us. It's especially true on account of our very weak armed forces. So, you know, having arms is the extension of democracy, of diplomacy. I think it was Clausewitz who said that. I'm not sure if I'm correct, but I'm sure Teddy Boy Locson can correct me anytime. He's a reader of Clausewitz. How long can we last to defend our country when a foreign intruder tries to invade us? As I once said, what we have is an air force with all air but no force, and a coast guard with all coast and no guard. While we adhere to Article 2, Section 2, 1987 of the Philippine Constitution, which says the Philippines renounces war as an instrument of national policy, and we adopt the generally accepted principles of international law as part of the law of the land and adheres to the policy of peace, equality, justice, freedom, cooperation, and amity with all nations. It is even more important that while we are in the process of strengthening the armed forces, just like the Japanese, enrich the country, strengthen the military, that should be our policy. I've always maintained that. That we take advantage of our international political capital and foreign alliances to protect our country and advance our interests pursuant to Article 2, Section 7 of the 1987 Constitution. States shall pursue an independent foreign policy in its relations with other states. The paramount consideration shall be national sovereignty, territorial integrity, national interest, and the right to self-determination. What am I doing? Reading all this. You know all this. I just have to give credence and justification to my staff who did it. All right. President George Washington once said, "It is our true policy to steer clear of permanent alliances with any portion of the foreign world so far. I mean, as we are not at liberty to do it." That time they were quite weak. Before going, we call on Secretary Locsin to discuss how the agency's 2022 budget can better meet the objectives of the Department of Foreign Affairs to protect and advance the interests of the Filipino people and to position the Philippines to a position finally of international respect. and national dignity in the international sphere. Secretary Locsin, you have the floor. I know you're feeling under the weather just like me, but you know, we're all strong. We're still strong at heart. So please proceed. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Richard Gordon, Chairperson of Subcommittee G, honorable members of the committee. Good afternoon. I am honored to present the budget of the Department of Foreign Affairs for 2022. We propose a budget of 21.051 billion pesos. That is 5.43% less than this year's 22.26 billion pesos budget and represents a mere 0.42% of the proposed national budget. Since the pandemic, the DFA has turned over a third of its budget to DBM. Indeed, when the pandemic started, I was asked by President Duterte if I needed more funds. We did, I said, but no thank you. We will make do with less, that is the challenge. The amount we propose here will fund the operations of our home office, 94 foreign service posts, and 36 consular offices, which altogether serve 10.37 million overseas Filipinos in 195 countries and millions more here at home. Nearly 2 years into the pandemic, the DFA has not wavered in its mandate to keep our territory secure, contribute to national economic development, protect the rights and attend to the welfare of overseas Filipinos, promote Filipino culture, and uphold our nation's standing in the global community. Resolute and resilient, the DFA has forged ahead under the guidance and direction of President Duterte. As no one thought possible, we have pursued an independent foreign policy for the first time in the history of the Republic and done well by it, earning a heightened respect from the community of nations. If we had been a tail, we would now be wagging the dog. I might add that when you see on social media about different foreign powers in the West saying that China must stop bullying the people in the countries in Southeast Asia, I say, what are you talking about? Because we have never been bullied. It takes two to be bullied, the bully and the one who lets himself be bullied. Well, we never. On top of which, as I will explain later, every incursion we answer immediately. We have never been bullied. In fact, I believe I think it's only in Indochina, or the former Indochina, where you might be able to say that, and I'm not so sure. I have met the leaders of Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam, and man, those guys are tough. They're closer to China than we are. Nearly 2 years into the pandemic, has not wavered in its mandate to keep our territory secure, contribute to national development, protect the rights and attend to the welfare of overseas Filipinos, promote Filipino culture. I think I said this already. But I can tell you, we have not surrendered a single inch of territory. Not by word or deed have we weakened our right to everything in the West Philippine Sea. And without inviting pity by asking, we achieved an international consensus that the right is with us and might cannot ever take it away. In all my engagements, I have stressed the Philippines' vision of the South China Sea as a sea of peace, security, stability, and prosperity. DFA is proud to say, just because we have differences does not mean we have to fight over everything, but fight we will when we must. If anything, we have fortified international support for the 2016 Arbitral Award. At the East Asia Summit, Foreign Ministers Meeting, and the ASEAN Regional Forum, our partners affirmed the award and UNCLOS as the legal framework within which all the activities in the oceans and seas must be carried out. As country coordinator for ASEAN-China dialogue relations, the Philippines takes pride in the gains achieved in negotiations on the Code of Conduct in the South China Sea. Despite limitations due to the pandemic, we reached provisional agreement on the preamble without spending a single dollar in foreign travel. An effective and substantive COC remains our goal. It goes without saying that it must uphold UNCLOS and the Arbitral Award and not undermine them. At the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting and related meetings, I emphasized Philippine priorities in the region, addressing COVID, making vaccines a global public good, which was announced in the UN, combating the climate crisis, counseling cooperation in the Indo-Pacific in line with the ASEAN outlook, and implementing the 5-point consensus in Myanmar. Among foreign donors, we alone spoke up in Washington, D.C. to provide vaccines to Myanmar, which is under the triple scourge of dictatorship, repression, and the pandemic. In that meeting, I stipulated that vaccine assistance to Myanmar should be given, but it cannot be used by the junta in Myanmar as a weapon for submission to dictatorial rule. I said vaccines will not be used to lure suspected critics of the junta. In short, vaccine followed by incarceration, jail after coming forward to be jabbed. There will be no compromise with dictatorship. An upside of this pandemic is the renewed and re-energized relationship with our bilateral partners, especially in our shared struggle to combat COVID. In the past year alone, we held political and economic consultations by Zoom with Belgium, Netherlands, UAE, Australia, Germany, India, and Spain. We welcome visits of the Hungarian Foreign Minister and Trade, the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, Minister of State, and of the US National Security Advisor and Acting Secretary of Defense. 2021 is the 75th anniversary of our diplomatic relations with the United States and the 70th anniversary of the Mutual Defense Treaty. The alliance is vital to maintaining stability and alliance in the Asia-Pacific region. President Duterte restored that balance during Defense Secretary Austin's visit in July by reinstating an improved visiting forces agreement. I handed Austin the official document restoring the VFA. I was in Washington last week for the 75th anniversary of our relations with the U.S. and met with Secretary Blinken, among others, to discuss strengthening of our alliance and the situation in Afghanistan. It is now known all over the world that while I cannot give details for the safety of the Afghan refugees we have taken in, we are the first to do it, outside the major powers who took part in that conflict. And for that, I would like to give credit to Paul Dominguez of the ADB and to Sunny Dominguez, because it was touch and go. Can we even get out the Afghans from their homes? That was one. Two, if we did, can they cross the tarmac without getting shot? So it would be take out, put back, cross, turn back. But they never faltered. They just kept at it. And then finally, next thing you know, there they are. They're here, but they can't tell you where. The Philippines' economic recovery hinges on addressing COVID, or should I say, learning to live with it. Apparently, this variant is really vicious, and I think it only died because of it. DFA has contributed to our national efforts by facilitating vaccine procurement and securing assistance and bringing home our displaced overseas Filipinos. In Washington, I met with Secretary Blinken. We discussed the thing, and I said, well, to tell you the truth, the first one to come to our assistance was Sinovac, and was China with its Sinovac. And when it comes to, we took it in, and you know what, he looked at me and he said, why do you have to explain that? It's a vaccine. Take it, jab yourself with it. You gotta stay alive. That's all. And what I really like is that there was no vaccine diplomacy evident. Especially, I said, in the case of the United States, its biggest donation goes through the UN, COVAX facility. In the case of China, I asked, can I buy? And what I truly appreciate about China is its candor. I said, no, you can't. We will give you what we can spare. But remember, we have a 1.3 billion population we have to secure. So nobody was trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. And I think I've answered that decisively in social media. They want to call it vaccine diplomacy, they can go ahead. I don't care. Through the efforts of our foreign service posts, we have acquired vaccines from Japan, China, the United Arab Emirates, Australia, Russia, and the United States, directly or through the COVAX facility. The Philippines has now administered more than 30 million doses, with more than 13 million people fully vaccinated. We are third in ASEAN, 11th in Asia, and 23rd globally in terms of vaccines administered. In ASEAN, we established the COVID-19 ASEAN Response Fund. Pledges include Australia's 300 million Australian dollars vaccine and health security assistance for Southeast Asia. Japan's US $1 billion. Russia's Sputnik V vaccines to Asia-Pacific countries. And the US contribution of 23 million doses of vaccines and more than $158 million in emergency health and humanitarian assistance. The DFA has also facilitated humanitarian assistance in the form of PPEs, testing kits, ventilators, and PCR machines, amounting to approximately $15.5 million. We did not stop there. At the pandemic's onset, the President directed DFA to bring home our displaced overseas Filipinos. Our Migrant Workers Affairs Office and our 94 foreign service posts set on a massive repatriation effort. To date, we have brought home 421,676 Filipinos. In line with our mandate to protect overseas Filipinos, our embassies and consulates continue to provide regular reports on host countries' COVID recovery plans, best practices, and travel advisories. Most importantly, they monitor conditions of affected and COVID-stricken Filipinos while providing them and their families support through meals and relief packs while their jobs have been put on hold due to the pandemic. On Afghanistan, our ambassador and his team in Islamabad are leading the Herculean effort to repatriate our Filipinos. As of today, there are only 20 Filipinos remaining in Kabul, with 2 requesting repatriation, and I think they're here, and 18 signifying the desire to remain. And I'm told it's because they are part of Medicines with Doctors Without Borders. That's really impressive. With the help of our partner countries, including the US, the UK, Kuwait, France, Norway, Indonesia, Pakistan, Qatar, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Germany, 191 Filipinos have been evacuated by us or their employers, and I thank them all. But above all, I thank our OFWs, our overseas Filipinos, because before we knew it, they had found their own accommodations in flights getting out of Kabul before we could even help them. That's one thing about the OFWs. High performance, low maintenance. They will take care of themselves. They don't wait. So it's not like, they can take care of themselves. That's an admirable quality. On asylum seekers and refugees, the Philippines will continue to extend assistance in line with its long tradition of timely and responsive humanitarian action. I cannot say more. The situation is fluid, to put it mildly. We will not engage in any asylum. We will not engage in any asylum unless it is on a government-to-government basis. Sometimes I get approached by, the usual characters. No, I'm not going to do asylum for money. That's for sure. Anyone tries, he will find himself on Twitter. As of 8 September 2021, the DFA has used up over 638.93 million pesos of the 1 billion peso Assistance to Nationals Fund. 36,063 overseas Filipinos have benefited from it. This translates to a 63.89 utilization rate of the fund. We have also dispersed 64.33 million pesos out of the 200 million peso legal assistance fund for 1,615 beneficiaries. On our mandate to uphold our nation's standing in the global community, the Philippines maintained its Tier 1 status in the U.S. State Department's Trafficking in Persons report for 2021. At the United Nations, we continue to be hailed for our initiatives to combat trafficking and providing appropriate and timely service to Filipino victims. I think there are 3 now in Riyadh who have been beaten up by some general and his wife. In February 2021, we repatriated 34 trafficking victims already staying at the Philippine Embassy shelter in Syria, and yet they were trafficked. As of June 2021, because I got angry, the shelter in Syria has been emptied, all wards repatriated. And then I recalled delinquent officers, all men, and installed a Wonder Woman in charge of it. If I want something done, that's what I do. In multilateral fora, the Philippines also pushed its agenda, including the protection of its maritime sovereign interests, counterterrorism, and addressing the impact of the pandemic. At the APEC leaders meeting in November, President Duterte joined in the issuance of the Kuala Lumpur Declaration, which highlighted the need for international cooperation for economic recovery amid the pandemic. At the UN, we held our banner high as a leader in the protection of migrants by spearheading a joint statement on the impact of COVID-19 on migrants. We advocated for addressing the impacts of COVID-19, the need for equitable access to vaccines, and pushing for COVID-19 vaccines to be considered a global public good. With the DOJ and the UN Representative Coordinator, we finalized our UN joint program to strengthen national institutions' capacity to promote and protect human rights. The program is rooted in President Duterte's directive for constructive and open engagement with the UN in a non-politicized manner. And this has gone very well. Some countries have asked me to ask the United Nations for a similar joint program for them. The face of the DFA is passport services. Making them available and accessible is numero uno. In 2020, we issued 1,732,459 passports. For the first half of this year alone, we have already issued 1,281,836 passports. We opened 6 temporary off-site services in rental-free spaces, providing an additional 177,500 slots until the end of September. Thank you, SM and Robinsons. They're giving us the space for free. Those figures may seem rosy, but we still have a backlog of 3 to 4 million applications. That's because there is a flood of applicants, and due to venue capacity limitations brought about by the lockdowns. We open new consular offices, but there are no funds to continue their operations. We have to open more temporary off-site sites. And while the rent is free, setting up costs money, and we need your help, sirs. We also rolled out the online visa application system globally. It cut time and face-to-face contact in the pandemic. We had hoped to open 3 more posts, but we deferred for the far more important concerns of the pandemic. We have forgone renovation of our ancient and crumbling headquarters, but it has not collapsed yet, so it will do. There are more pressing matters to attend to than building a new building or whatever they want to do with it. My chair, my people at the DFA are the finest civil servants with years of experience and complete dedication to public service. I am proud of them. I'm humbled to serve with them. As you know, when we were in Congress together, you in the Senate, me in the House, we had the automated election law. And why people were saying, well, why don't we, that should be administered by the Comelec. What? Are you kidding? No, I don't trust them. I only trust the DFA. And so it went to the DFA. I did not know it was such hard work, and on top of which we did not even have money to do it. But never mind, they took it on, and they have been doing it faithfully. As I said, I'm humbled to serve with them, so I've made sure they're provided with capacity building training and assistance. At the end of the day, we can only give our public as much as we know how. So we keep improving our skills. And finally, with your permission, Honorable Chair, my Assistant Secretary for Fiscal Management Services, Ambassador Amaila Makahilig, will present the details of our budget proposal. DFA's attached agencies will thereafter make their own presentations. Thank you very much for your attention and listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Locsin, for a very succinct, if you will, considering that you're all over the world. You were able to make a very good presentation of the footprint that you have created in other countries for the Philippines. We shall now listen to the presentation. By the way, I'd like to say that the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee is here, no less than our good friend Coco Pimentel. I think that did you say that Secretary Makahilig is going to make a presentation on the details of the budget, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
She was
Secretary
here.
Makahilig, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Your Honor, Mr. Secretary, Undersecretaries, colleagues. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and honorable members of the Senate Finance Committee. With the background of the Secretary's earlier presentation on the DFA's accomplishments for FY 2020 and the DFA's ongoing activities for the year, as well as the priorities and thrusts for FY 2022, may I now respectfully walk you through the financial aspects of the DFA's plans and programs for FY 2022, as included in the administration's National Expenditure Program. Next slide. For FY 2022, the DFA Office of the Secretary or the core DFA is provided with 20.91 billion pesos. In addition, the National Expenditure Program has the following provisions for the attached agencies of the DFA. So for the Foreign Service Institute or FSI, it's 68.80 million. For the UNESCO National Commission of the Philippines or the UNACOM, 24.78 million. The Technical Cooperation Council of the Philippines or TCCP with 4.64 million. And our youngest attached agency, the Presidential Commission on the Visiting Forces or PCVF with 47.02 million. Your Honor, the heads of the attached agencies are also attending this hearing online. So any questions or concerns specific to their agencies may be addressed by them directly. Moving forward with the DFA budget itself, with the DFA Office of the Secretary and the four attached agencies, the total combined budget for the Department of Foreign Affairs amount to 21.051 billion. When viewed in relation to the FY 2020 total national budget, which stands at 5.024 trillion, the total DFA budget is very small indeed, amounting to even less than half of 1% of the total national budget. To be exact, the DFA budget of 21.051 billion is just 0.42% of the total national budget. Next slide. The next three slides actually show how the DFA fares in comparison with the other government agencies in terms of the budgetary provision for FY 2022. In a list of 35 appropriation sources or agencies with budget provision in the FY 2022 National Expenditure Program, the DFA is in the lower half of the group, ranking 20th in terms of budget amount, just a little higher than the Commission on Audit and below the Department of Finance. In considering the allocation of public monies to government operating agencies, we ask that the honorable members of this committee also take note that the department does make a decent contribution to the national coffers through its remittances to the Bureau of Treasury. Prior to COVID, for the period 2016 to 2019, DFA's consular operations had a total remittance to the BTR amounting to an average of 2.93 billion as reflected in the BTR's own reports. The DFA has always stood at number 6 or number 7 of the top 10 non-tax fee collecting agencies of government. As can be seen on screen, the department's operations was hit hard during the pandemic and it's still experiencing the pinch up to this time. 2020 saw a significant reduction of consular income to just about a third of its level from the preceding years. Nonetheless, the DFA remained as 7th in collection levels for that year. Next slide. So, Your Honors, at this juncture, please allow me to present the specifics of the DFA OSEC FY 2022 budget. As mentioned earlier by the Honorable Secretary, the total budget for the department amounts to 20.906 billion pesos. This is broken down into Tier 1 in the amount of 20.052 billion, representing 96% of the total agency budget for its ongoing activities. Tier 2 in the amount of 0.854 billion or 4% of the total agency budget are for new and expansion projects for the DFA. Next slide. When we look at the DFA budget, we can also look at the appropriations in terms of how it's broken down in terms of allotment class. So for FY 2022, the DFA OSEC budget is allocated by allotment class as follows. 8 billion 767,595,000 or 42% of the agency budget is meant for personal services. 11,305,865,000 or 54% is for maintenance and other operating expenses. 23,275,000 or 0.1% is for financial expenses. And the fourth subgroup amounting to 808,949,000 or 3.9% of the total budget is for capital outlay. The slide also shows that this, in terms of the spread of the budget between provisions for the home office units and the foreign service post is quite equal. So 52% of the budget amounting to 10,913,436,000 is meant for projects, programs, and activities within the country, while 48% or 9,992,251,000 of the budget is expected to be utilized for PAPs in the foreign service. The next two slides will show how the DFA annual budget is allocated based on the DBM's program expenditure classification or PREXI along with allotment class. So for FY 2022, 2.52 billion or 12% of the budget is allocated for general administration and support services or GAS, which encompass programs and activities for the general management and supervision of DFA operations, as well as the administration of its personnel benefits. 134.8 million or 0.6 is allocated for support to operations, encompassing programs and activities such as legal services, as well as policy, planning, coordination, integration, and monitoring. The bulk of the budget really is in the main operations category. So for operations, 18.24 billion or 87% of the budget is allocated to the two main operating objectives of the DFA per PREXI. For the first operating objective or for the diplomacy program, 9.67 billion is allocated for programs that will encompass programs, activities, and projects that will strengthen foreign relations to promote national development and international cooperation. The 8.58 billion is intended for the second operating objective under operations, which is consular and ATN program, which is meant for consular operations such as passporting, visa issuances, and the like, as well as assistance to nationals. The next three slides will provide further details of the budget provision for the core operations of the DFA. As mentioned earlier, the DFA has two main operational objectives. Its diplomacy program, one, and second, the consular and ATN program. The diplomacy program is further categorized into two subsets. The first one being the formulation, coordination, and supervision of foreign policy programs and activities that are mainly implemented by the geographic offices in Manila with an allocation of 2.74 billion. And the second subset is in terms of the conduct of foreign service posts of bilateral and multilateral relations in accordance with foreign policy directives, which has an allocation of 6.93 billion. Next slide. The second operational objective is for the department's consular operations and its assistance to nationals program. For the consular services, which would encompass programs and activities such as issuance of passports, visas, and other consular documents, the FY 2022 provision stands at 7.32 billion. The second subset for the consular and ATN program is for assistance to nationals or ATN program, which encompass programs and activities for the protection of the rights and promotion of the welfare of overseas Filipinos. For FY 2022, the allocation is 1.26 billion. And this is where the ATN fund and LAF are presented. And for this year, there's a slight increase in terms of the budget for the OBS. It may be noted that the ATN and the LAF programs in terms of amount have not really changed for the last 3 to 4 years. Now, comparing the levels of the FY 2021 NEP to what the department received under GAA 2021, we can clearly see the reduction across all allotment class. For FY 2021, the GAA provided the DFA with appropriations amounting to about 22.47 billion. In comparison, the FY 2022 NEP provides the DFA with just 20.905 billion, or a reduction of about 1.56 billion, representing 7%, a 7% drop from the FY 2021 GAA. The reduction is primarily due to the exclusion of the funding for the retrofitting project for the DFA main building, as well as the discontinuance or the non-provision of funding for various Congress-introduced amendments approved last year. As we wind up the presentation of the highlights of the DFA's FY 2022 budget in the National Expenditure Program, we hope that it is noted that the department actually submitted an FY 2022 budget proposal amounting to 39,079,124,000. As much as we appreciate the continued support of the Senate to the DFA's budget as incorporated in the NEP, we sincerely continue to appeal to the honorable members of this committee for the Senate's support for favorable consideration of other activities and programs on top of the NEP, which we believe are essential for the department to continue to perform its mandate at the exemplary level that the DFA has always stood for. So at this point, we actually beg the committee's generous consideration. As we present the details of the other budgetary items, we are requesting the committee's support for addition to the DFA budget on top of the NEP. For facility, we have actually grouped these additional items into 3 sets, 2 of which have monetary implications and 3 are essential special provisions in the implementation of the budget for the relevant year. So the first set, amounting to 3.8 billion, consists of 13 projects which we believe should have been included in Tier 1 and therefore should be viewed as mandatory provision. These 13 projects include earlier. Back. Again. This set includes the provision of funding for the Plan 10 temporary off-site passport services scheduled to facilitate or at least to ease the backlog in the passport issuance. As mentioned earlier, we already have 6 sites that have been opened, and there is still a plan for 4 more and additional ones coming as the need will be determined. Also included in this set of programs and activities and projects that we believe should be Tier 1 are the additional or the necessary funding provision for the posts that have been opened in 2019. There's a partial provision there already, but it's not to what is actually required. Along with the post, yes,
May
ma'am.
I just interrupt, Asek, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I'm only going to ask regarding budget items. I'm quite concerned about this. You put Tier 1 as your top priority. What's the total amount requested? I think it's 3 billion plus something. Can I have the exact amount, please, once again, so that in the event that there's money to be found, we can address these
3.8
concerns.
billion.
Yes, thank you very much. Kasi yung entire 19 billion, mahihirapan na tayo dyan. Pero yung 3.8 or at least a part of it is justified to my mind with the 3 to 4 million na
Yeah, because
backlog in
they can make the
renewal.
money anyway with the opening of passport offices. That is an
Oo.
income generating aspect, no? Di ba, Miss
Tama.
Makiling?
Yes,
Tama
sir.
po ba yun? Oh, yes. Okay po. Sige po.
Oo, justified nga yan eh.
Yes, sir. So, I guess we at this point we don't really have to go to the second component of our tier 2 or the full list of the new and expansion projects, but we can certainly submit the list still to the honorable members of this committee for consideration if at all there is enough resources that can be determined in the course of the year. But Mr. Chairman and the other members of the committee, we also beg your indulgence in the consideration of the third subset for the tier 2. It doesn't have any monetary consideration at this point. It's really just special provisions for the DFA. And these are guidelines, parameters in the implementation of the FY 2022 budget that we hope would make the implementation of the budget more realistic and more effective for the DFA. So there's a good set of guidelines.
Can
that
you
we
can
will
you give us an
communicate.
inkling what these are? Is this to do with the retention of passport and visa income?
Yes, ma'am. We actually have a list of this one, again segregated in terms of the nature. So there are some special provisions in the FY 2021 that we are proposing some changes to. There are also some that are really new. So again, these are non-monetary in that sense, but these are conditions in the implementation of the budget that should make DFA operations more realistic and more effective um, in terms of how it utilizes the resources allocated to it. Okay. So for this set, for example, ma'am, we are proposing that these guidelines or these special provisions um, be retained in the FY 2022.
Yes, ASEC.
Yes, ma'am.
ASEC, have you presented this to the DBM? Have they posited any opinion, considering that this would be technical malversation unless you got special permission?
Ma'am, these were
Ano
included.
sabi nila? Okay ba sila dyan?
Well, these were included in the DFA submission, but essentially what is incorporated in the 2022 NEP is pretty much the same as what is in 2020.
So, hindi sila pumayag sa madaling sabi?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So, moving forward po, ma'am.
Secretary Locsin, go ahead.
Yeah, no, one of the things that I changed is that when it comes to contributions to international organizations, I don't care too much about hosting of regional or international conferences, but contributions to international organizations, the first time I realized about that was when I was profusely thanked by the American who was in charge of that area. And it turns out we had given $10,000. I was really embarrassed. But apparently they don't shame people there. You give, you're mentioned together with the billionaires. But when it came to the COVAX facility, when it came to the response fund for this pandemic, I just gave $100,000 here, $100,000 there. It got paid back. We got it all back and more. That one helps, I think. And then as long as we
Totoo yan.
monitor who is going to be given this bigger donations, I think we're fine because we get the respect and attention of the world. But as I said, in the UN, they don't look at the cost, but people here. I don't think they're going to praise me anymore, whether it's $10,000 or $100,000. But it's really worthwhile. I remember when the first time that happened was when there was this storm that hit Japan, and the Philippines under President Noynoy,
That's
Yeah.
right.
$350 million, or some huge amount. Then I said, my God, it's about time we stop, you, you, you expect them to help us when we can and they're hit, even if they're rich, that's really increases our standing. As long as we keep track and nothing is stolen or wasted.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
wholeheartedly agree with the statement made by by Secretary Locsin, because I've been doing that in the Philippine Red Cross.
That's right.
When I got in, we were not even paying our dues.
Hmm.
It's a national embarrassment as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
Started paying on both organizations, ICRC and IFRC, and that changed the complete temperament. And then we started donating to international. If I may show you, uh, the Red Cross ain't done so bad. We gave to Katrina $25,000. We gave to tsunami $2,400,000, which we
Good.
raised, and recently to the fires in Australia, $100,000, and it came back to us in tremendous amounts. And I think that the secretary is correct that we should always mind our duties. We're not a rich country, and they realize that, but at least there is an effort to show that we are in solidarity with them. So I wholeheartedly support that.
And also, if I may add, I remember I was being asked when I was in the UN to propose hosting another conference. I said no, because I was seated with the Sultan of Brunei. The president was with me, and we were discussing such events like hosting and hosting. I mean, what are we, hostesses? Anyway, they just what the president says, because he was a little tired of this hosting. He tells to the Sultan, he says, "Can you take the next one?" And he says, "No, why?" He said, he's so rich. And he said, "What am I going to do with all the facilities that have to be built up
Yeah.
to host this?" No, Brunei. Okay, sure, we have lots of money. What are we going to do with that? So I think what matters is to contribute to emergencies and show that we stand in solidarity with the rest of the world. They host it, never mind na yan. Oh, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Thank
Ms.
you very much.
Mahaili?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so these are a variety of special
I
provisions.
just want to tell you that I really disdain being called Mr. Chair. Maybe you can call Teddy Boy Locsin Mr. Chair, but not me.
Apologies, sir.
Thank you. That's all right. It's just it's always a bone of contention here. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. So for the next slide, it's essentially the we just reclassify the special provisions that we want the committee to have a look at, because there are some that are included there, but we want a tweak in terms of the specific terminology and how we propose that it be actually applied. So we've classified them into for revision or for retention or for some adjustments, sir. So
This was not approved by the DBM. They objected to this. Was there any explanation?
it's just not included in the NEP, ma'am. A good number of the provisions actually are
I think in the past, similar provisions were actually contained in the DFA in the special section of DFA. So I'm wondering why they have been excluded since.
there are some, ma'am, that have been changed. For example, like for this one, we are
I think it's we don't need to go through them one by one. We can probably present them to the DBM once again. Baka makalusot yung iba.
yes, ma'am. So that actually winds up our presentation to the esteemed committee on the DFA's FY 2022 budget proposal. And again, ma'am, sir, we express our deep appreciation for the support that the Senate and this committee has given to the department. The support definitely continues to give our DFA family, DFA OSEC, and the attached agencies the inspiration and the conviction in its work, especially in the face of the numerous challenges that we encounter in our day-to-day operations. We continue to appeal still for your continued partnership and support in these endeavors through the provision of the necessary financial resources as well as guidelines in the form of those special provisions that should help the department perform its mandate and fulfill its commitment to our country and our kababayans. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Senator Locsin.
I can tell you this also when it comes to vehicles. I have not only discouraged, I've changed the practice of getting Mercedes Benzes. What for? When I was in the UN, they'll give you a pass for one car. And we all have to fit into a car that's good for four. No, I said, from now on, any vehicles that are requested by ambassadors will be, utility vehicles. Big, heavy, to take them in and out. We're not here to show off. I mean, if we're George Clooney, maybe I will, but we're not. So we stay practical. I guarantee you that. There will never again be luxury cars. Never. Thank you.
Well, sound like the people that told Winston Churchill in that movie. Never.
That was not on purpose. and I
Never
didn't-
surrender. The Battle of Britain.
All right. The table is now open for questions. And are there any questions, Senator Marcos?
Yes, my chairman. There are a few concerns regarding the budget. It's a very paltry sum, and I have some concerns that, in fact, no funds were provided for the RCOs in many of our provinces. These were included in 2019 as additional items, but they were excluded in 2022. How are they going to survive? Are we going to close them, or can we carry on somehow? Or
Well,
wala na mag-a-apply kasi COVID?
Yes, I mean. Anybody want to answer that?
Yeah, we're a bit worried. These RCOs are a huge help to our provincianos, and we're really worried that they'll have to shut down because in 2019, nabigyan niya ng pera. 2022, axed out na naman. Paano ba yun?
Well, I'd like Yusek Dodo, Dula, you're there. Can you please help us with this?
Yes, sir. Some of them, Your Honors, we have already opened using our existing budget just to operate it. And for others, because this requires the approval of the Office of the President, it's already with the Office of the President. But you're right, Madam Senator, that unless we get the continuing funds for this, we will have to cannibalize basically our own funds to realign it to make this consular offices operate. And
Yeah.
it is the most effective manner, really, our consular offices to serve our Filipinos for consular services. So we direly need the funds for that particular purpose, Madam
Yes,
Senator.
for
Thank you.
those who live in the provinces, we all rely on these RCOs, and cannibalize is an alarming word. I hope we find a better way. Perhaps you can give us an update. Baka sakali naman kung hindi masyadong malaki yung halaga, maisingit-singit na lang dyan. Ganun din yung bagong bukas na foreign service post, Rabat, Stockholm, Barcelona, Nagoya, Melbourne, Istanbul. Is there enough money to sustain these new FSPs? Nakakahiya naman, kabubukas lang eh.
I think there is. We took that.
Your
into
Honor,
consideration.
Madam Senator, there
I
were
don't
funds
really
allocated.
understand.
There were funds allocated previously last year, but it was not completely funded, Your Honor. So
Ang
the
alam ko na
request now-
FLR yung iba, hindi ba na for later release, tapos hindi na natuloy because of course everything was dedicated to the pandemic.
Yes, Your Honor, you're correct, Your Honor. That was in the 2020 budget, and then funded in the 2021, but incompletely, Your Honor.
That's
And
right.
we have opened it already, but the complete allocation for those posts were not given to us. So again, Your Honor, in order to operate, Secretary Locsin has been very frugal and has always said, we'll take it from our budget. So again, practically, we're also again cannibalizing our current budget to make it operate.
Perhaps you
in
can
the
just
best way
submit to the committee a quick update. Once again, we'd just like to see a breakdown and also indicate your priorities. There are several posts here, like there are several RCOs Saan kayo kumikita dyan? Doon sa mga RCO, alin talaga yung marami ang nag-a-apply para sa pasaporte at doon naman sa ating foreign post na mga bago, let's also pick which ones are really useful and helping Filipinos overseas.
Yes, we will submit, Your Honor. We will submit to your
Can I
committee.
Leland, just to give us an idea so that we can help you along the way?
And,
Baka naman makapagbigyan. Yes,
Doc-
Secretary, please.
Yes, Dodo, don't forget, when we look at this post, although we have opened them, let's see just how big is the public it serves, the Filipino public it serves.
Yes,
Yes,
Yes, sir.
precisely.
That will be part of the equation,
Because
sir.
you have a post out there doesn't mean you have to fund it to the guilds. Okay,
Yes, that's right. That's right.
that's easy to Filipinos. People will sometimes say, well, a good friend of mine in Arab's administration is a real professional. I admire the guy. Siason, he quite didn't like, the service to the public when it should be grand diplomacy. Well, as far as I know, none of us is a Kissinger, and we are not the United States or Russia. So we are here. I said, what is foreign service? Foreign service is service abroad to the Filipinos. That's it. That's why I don't put down the care and the maintenance of overseas Filipino workers. That's okay with me. And other Filipinos overseas as tourists. That's what we're there for. We're not there to talk like Metternich or Kissinger. Okay? So I can assure you we will pare it down to the absolute essential in the service of the Filipino.
But these are important posts, Mr. Secretary, di ba?
Sure. Well, we'll see.
Stockholm is important.
Well, it's important in the sense we had that there before. Before we had great relations with the Wallenbergs. Remember
Yeah.
that? Raoul Wallenberg. I did some legal work for that family in Swedish Match, but I think
Yeah.
that's that
Remember
to-
Swedish Match?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Never mind. Let's not talk about that.
Pero konti lang yata Pilipino doon, ano? So,
In that case,
siguro-
it will be funded accordingly.
yes, that's right. Because we always recall Ronald Reagan that no government voluntarily reduces itself and a government program and a foreign service post once launched will never disappear, and that these government bureaus and posts are the nearest thing to eternal life we'll ever see on this earth. So, dapat ingat din tayo sa pagbubukas nito mga foreign service posts.
On the other hand, maybe we should have this practice. I don't know how warranted it is by the law. Like we shut down Havana. But that was a symbolic post. It
Yun
showed
na nga eh.
we were not, your dad was like that. The more it was being picked on by the West, the more he would put it up. And Havana has a symbolic issue, has a symbolic role in our foreign policy. The thing, though, is you don't have to have a giant facility there.
Yun na nga eh.
Point is, if it is big,
Symbolic,
if big
talagang
office,
symbolic
you
na
can
lang.
lose the people who are being sent there.
That's
But the thing
right.
is,
And
you maintain it, don't close it.
correct. And after all, there's already a Plaza Jose Rizal in Havana. So there's a Philippine presence there somehow. Okay. I'm just a little bit concerned.
Excuse me, I mean.
Yes, po.
Senator Marcos, let me just understand. Are you opening this 6 foreign service posts on a lesser scale? Is that what you're saying, or are you going to completely close them for the moment?
No, we're not closing that. The ones that are open will
They're open
stay
na eh.
open. And what
Yeah.
I'm saying is that, as in the case when we closed Havana, which I really sincerely hope we reopen because it has a great diplomatic value.
An historical value of that.
Yeah, if how many people we will put there, that will be determined by how useful their work is, the practical work is for the Filipinos abroad. But other than that, sometimes it's wrong to close the embassy. We could have had a small one in Hungary rather than closing it. Then we have to reopen it. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Now there are firmest allies in the European Union.
That's right.
We feel quite badly about that.
Mm.
Okay, so the COA audit, of 2020 regarding the Foreign Service Institute, my good chairman has been investigating PSDBM, and it appears that there are undelivered common use supplies and equipment in a much smaller amount, no doubt, than the Blue Ribbon investigation being undertaken, but nevertheless, it does not tally with the Foreign Service Institute. There's a big difference between the amount, almost double, between PSDBM and the Foreign Service Institute. Ba't nagkaganon?
Maybe.
Myla?
Myla, are you aware of this? And they've been parked, these funds have been parked by the Foreign Service Institute, which isn't a very wealthy agency by any means, for more than 4 years with PSDBM. And then, yes, and there are transfers to national government agencies, 8 years to more than 10 years in the case of UNESCO. What's all that?
Ma'am, I've only been in the job since the first quarter, so I'll pass you on to the one who handles our budget. Thank you.
Good afternoon,
Yes, Bob.
Madam Senator. The funds being referred to in the PSDBM, these were the items, the supplies, the items which were not provided by PSDBM, but we already paid for that. And it was already now in the National Treasury because the PSDBM can no longer provide those items.
Why?
These were no longer available in the PSDBM.
I
But it's
understand
already
there were
paid for.
textbooks and other school materials. Is that correct?
Textbooks. No, we did not have textbooks, madam.
Iba pa yun?
These were not with the FSI, madam.
I see. Okay. So if they were refunded, if this has been returned to the National Treasury, the books have not yet been tallied kasi meron differential. So ingat lang tayo dyan. So maybe you can give me na lang a quick report para we clear that. And also the advances that are dormant from PSDBM for more than 4 years. Magulo to, hindi ko maintindihan. They were transferred by DFA to PSDBM and then they stayed dormant, is that correct? For 8 to 10 years in the case of UNESCO?
Regarding that matter, Madam Senator, may I refer to ex-dear Lindsay Barrientos, please? Lindsay?
It's just to tidy up the accounts, particularly to do with PSDBM. Yes, Paul?
Good afternoon, ma'am. At the moment, we are still coordinating with the concerned government agencies wherein there are liquidation reports that have yet to be updated because these are projects from previous years, like more than 8 years ago. So we are
8
tracing
years
the.
yata eh. That's why they were flagged by COA.
Yes, ma'am. And our predicament is that the reports that were transferred or turned over from one accountant to another accountant were not in tally. That's why we have to be able to complete the documents or reports from the agencies that need to also complete the liquidation reports with us. So we are
let's try and sort that out quickly.
Yes.
8 to 10 years, baka tanggalin na yan sa listahan, ano? Gulo naman yan.
Yes, ma'am. We will continue following up with the concerned agencies.
Maybe if you cannot liquidate within the period required before we get to plenary, the next best thing would simply to give us an explanation or some kind of solution that can be undertaken so that we write off these amounts from your books.
Yes, ma'am. We will submit the report, ma'am.
Or reimburse something to the National Treasury para malimpyo na.
Because they have to validate the amounts, ma'am. Our amount and the amount of the agencies do not tally, so they cannot.
That's right. That's very clear.
Okay.
Yeah, but for such a long time, it's quite alarming. Anyway, also according to COA, there's an understatement of accounts, land and buildings by an estimated value of 1.24 billion due to unrecognized property identified. What is unrecognized property? It's a report on physical account of foreign service posts. I don't quite understand the terminology. What does unrecognized property mean? It's to do with the land and the buildings. Perhaps it's the estimated value. Is there a mix-up with foreign currency or bank valuations here or over there? I'm not clear. Or the failure to get it valued.
Dodo, would you like to
Yeah,
try?
Your Honor,
Malaki siya eh,
may,
because
may I call on ASEC Myla Makahilig, Your Honor, to answer that question. Thank
yeah,
you.
Asik Myla, malaki siya, 1.24 billion.
Yes, ma'am. The department has had some issues actually with its inventory of government property, both in terms of land and buildings constructed by the department. Again, there's a need for reconciliation because for the most part, I guess the old records when this
These are all, sorry, these are all land and buildings in foreign service posts. Is that correct?
yes,
That's
ma'am.
nothing to do with domestic property.
Yes, sir. Well, most are the ones with the foreign service post. There are some that actually need to be there's no record of their acquisition cost or even their current market value. That's why our unit at the DFA in charge of asset management has ongoing efforts in terms of doing inventory and updating the book costs or the book values of these properties, ma'am.
Yes, but surely market value can easily be assessed. I mean, there should be a nearby bank can tell you straight off.
Ma'am, again, because most of them may not have the original documents of acquisition, and
Even without acquisition, market value is fairly easy to come to.
yes, ma'am, but some of the accounting concerns you will still need to go back to accounting.
No, before you get to the accounting, kung market value lang naman eh. Simple lang naman yung market value, di ba? Yung bank valuation pwede na.
Yes, ma'am. We will consider that, ma'am, along with the guidance from COA in terms of the actual booking of the available data for the properties that are in question.
Yes, because I think these have been in question for such a long period that really we should just clear them from our accounts, no? And then also there's something here about capital outlay. Perhaps you can tell me, Secretary Locsin is behaving like a good Ilocano and making kuripot on the falling down building. But you have 676 million for capital outlay. Where is this going to be spent then?
Who can answer that, please?
ASEC Myla, sir.
That's it.
Just to clarify, this is a budget provision or a COA finding?
No, it's not a COA finding. It's a capital outlay allocation. Because I think, yeah, my understanding is the DFA building, although it's ancient and decrepit, is not going to be repaired. There's no continuing retrofit. Diba sa budget ng 2022, wala namang retrofitting yung DFA main. Nevertheless, you have a capital outlay for 677 million. Where's that allotted to?
Yeah. Ma'am, part of our capital outlay provision every year is for building fund. This is a special provision for the past, I guess, 10 years.
Yes, but where is it going?
Ma'am, for the repair and acquisition of properties abroad.
This is for overseas.
Yes, ma'am. And consular
Acquisition. Akala ko hindi na tayo magbubukas ng bagong FSP muna.
Ma'am, there's a provision every year for maintenance of consular offices.
Wait lang. Maintenance, iba na yan. MOOE na yan. Ibang usapan na yan. Ito naka-categorize sa CO.
Yes, ma'am. It's part of it that will be for the high, it's more the high end and the more costly repair work that is needed in the foreign service post and essentially for consular premises.
Okay, akala ko usapan natin wala nang pasikat sa abroad. Hindi naman tayo nagpapanggap na mayaman tayo. Bakit uunahin pa natin yung mga mayayaman lugar at ihuhuli yung ating headquarters mismo dito sa Pasay?
Ma'am, because the provision itself for the building fund is intended for projects abroad. For example, for 2022, the list
Yes,
of
yes, ASEC, but it's not written in stone. That's why we're having this discussion po. Kasi we're trying to establish priorities din. Secretary Locsin has been very, very clear about his priorities, and this doesn't appear to be one of them. So I'm just confused.
Should we ask Tony? I think, Asik Tony, would you like to help explain it?
Hi, Tony. Hi, Amba. Who's there?
Hi, Tony.
It's okay. I mean, if there's a breakdown somewhere, maybe you can
Well,
give
you
that
can
to us, because undoubtedly it will be brought up in the floor and we have to respond, no?
Asik Tony, please.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Senator. It's good to see you. It's true that the Secretary has said that abroad we will not make pasikat. But of course, as you very well know, Madam Senator, in Singapore and in Hong Kong, where I have served, we own properties there. We don't want to make pasikat, but we have to really maintain the properties. And in Singapore and Hong Kong, it is quite expensive to maintain both the residence and the chancery or the consulate. We
All right,
want
Tony, so this is not acquisition for properties abroad. Rather, it's retrofitting and repair of existing properties.
that is correct, ma'am. But in
Okay,
addition,
so
we also use part of that to acquire CCTV cameras, big screens for the public. We use some of it for capital outlay to maintain
it's
a
got to be all,
respectable.
Yusek, it's got to be all of it for capital outlay, because your heading is capital outlay. That's why I'm a little bit concerned that you have acquisition, and earlier on there was mention of maintenance. Hindi pwede yun kasi nagkakahalo-halo tayo sa CO at MOOE. Yun lang. Maybe you can give me na lang a breakdown. And now the most important question of all, which is in everybody's mind, is the complaints, the ongoing complaints about the passports, and we just wanted an update on that. You have an amount here of, what does it say now? 3.446 billion e-passport budget. Managing expectations lang po, what will be included for 2022?
Yes, yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Your Honor, the additional budget for the passport is really covered by the MICA, MAYOA. We have a MAYOA for that passport issuance. As you know, Madam Senator, in the past years, there have been different varying amounts of passports that are being serviced. And for the past, in 2020, we had still an outstanding debt of around 398 million to Apple, who is the provider
Your
for
joint
those
venture
passports.
partner, right?
Yes, Your Honor, and which is why we are asking for a supplement, because we have actually printed more and given more passports than was allocated in our MAYOA, and we would like to have that. On the issue of the passport issuance
Yes,
backlog,
very
Your Honor.
simply. In 2022, you have proposed the budget of 3.446 billion for the e-passport. Kasama na ba dun yung utang na sinasabi ninyo na 398 million? Nakaikot na ba yan o
Asik
bago
Myla,
yan?
did we? Yes,
Sorry.
may I refer to Asik Myla, Your Honor. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to update, because there's this ongoing drama of your joint venture agreement with Apple and UGEC, di ba? United Graphic Expression. Until when is the duration of this JVA, and will you be able to clear your debts with the provision of the 3.446 billion in the 2022 budget para matapos na itong teleserye
Yes.
nito?
Well, initially, Your Honor, we would just like to emphasize that that contract was signed long before Secretary
Yes, I
Locsin took
understand
over.
that. I understand
Yes.
that. But just
And-
wondering, kailan ba matatapos yung utang dyan? Na once and for all, wala na yan. At yung JVA na yan, hanggang kailan ba yan?
I understand it's up to 2025 or 2026, Your Honor, but ASEC Myla can provide the details for the amount, Your Honor. ASEC Myla, please.
Asek Myla, please.
Ma'am, if I may, the passport printing and personalization project of the DFA has a 10-year MAYOA covering 2016 to 2026. For FY 2022, the amount in the MAYOA is actually 3.636 billion, but
Yes.
what is provided in the NEP is just the 3.448, which is the same level as we have for FY 2021.
That's right. So it's not going to erase any of the debt from the past. Is that what I understood?
Yes, ma'am, especially because the debt is actually was incurred in 2018 and 2019 and cannot be paid out of current appropriations.
What do we intend to do about that debt?
Um, Ma'am, the department actually had several undertakings towards settlement of the debt. We have asked for modification of funds. The last one was a request for modification of the funds, the excess from 2020. This has been submitted to the DBM, except DBM.
We understand all that, but the problem is that Apple keeps pointing to your unpaid debts as the reason for the delay and the mix-up. Sorry. Okay, so that's always the bone of contention. What do we intend to do about it?
Ma'am, because of budget and accounting regulations, we cannot use the current
Yes,
appropriation.
I understand that. I understand that, po. But I think we have to find a way to settle this matter. Otherwise, the e-passport issue will never end.
Yes, ma'am. The provision that is in place actually identified the PRF as a possible source, but that is also a concern for us, ma'am, because the PRF passport revolving fund.
I see.
But that will be inadequate to meet the requirements. At the same time, the PRF is the source of our payment for the contractuals that are in service for the department.
Okay, I just enjoin you. There are these matters that keep arising year after year, so perhaps it would be useful and much tidier accounting if we could just start settling some of them. Yun lang, those are the only questions I have, and if you could submit to Chairman Gordon of this committee, subcommittee, the information that may be necessary when we come to plenary. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Senator, does anybody else want to comment or make do some questions? Senator Pimentel, are you there?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Just a few questions.
Please.
The RCO mentioned by Senator Marcos, is this the same as the CO that you mentioned in your Tier 1 request, number 3?
Yes, Your Honor, it's the same, Your Honor.
Same. Okay, so the question of Senator Marcos referred to existing COs ngayon, but you're requesting budget for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 COs. Are these new COs or the same RCO mentioned by Senator Marcos?
ASEC Myla, please. Thank you.
Sir, the one that is for reconsideration in the Tier 1 is actually COs that have been that have been opened except for there's 5. So there's consular office in Dasmariñas, Olongapo, Pagadian, Paniqui, and San Jose. The request really is for funding to complete the full requirement of those 5. There is partial provision in the NEP it's not the full requirement to for the full operation of the CO, sir.
Okay. But once opened, how are they maintained? Saan nilalagay yung budget in the subsequent years?
Sir, they're already in operation, so there is a provision for them already, but it is not the full requirement of the COs. So parang may partial provision siya na, sir, in the NEP, but it's not what they actually fully require. Like their operating needs is just like 50%.
Saan nyo kunin ang balance eh?
Sir, in the previous one, it was primarily Congress introduced amendment, sir.
Okay. Let us assume sa existing COs ninyo kulang. Where in your tier 1 requests is the amount to answer for the additional funds needed to maintain the COs? Where is it? Meron kayong 1 to 13 eh, sa tier 1 items that you are requesting for.
The list, the 13 project list is actually projects that we believe should be tier 1. The COs concerned, Las Marinas, Paniquis, San Jose, Pagadian, and Olongapo, are already in operation. There's a partial provision in the NEP already, sir. What we are asking for this section is really the full requirement.
Para maintindihan ko, itong 3.8 billion, are we asking you, is the department asking for this to over and above the 20.9?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yun na nga, yun ang pagkaintindi ko kasi proposed budgetary items for reconsideration ito. So, you want the Senate to add to your budget and then also convince the other house para maging effective, di ba? So, okay. Meron kayo rito number 11 po, ma'am, of your list. Funds for 3 posts planned to be opened. So, in 2020, so na-delay na po ito. Ano po to? Which posts?
Yes, sir. The 3 posts are Addis Ababa, Colombo, and Nur Sultan in Kazakhstan. These are already actually approved in 2020, except they form part of the NBC 580 compliance. So what we're asking for is really for them to be provided budget so that we can open them up based on the priority list of the department.
Okay, the budget na to before. I think you gave up the budget, no? For COVID ba yan? For COVID reaction. So,
yes, sir. For NBC 580, sir.
So, na-delay na. Tama, it's part of your presentation. Na-delay lang ng konti ang opening. So, kumusta yung si Yusek Morales?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon po.
Mentioned our properties in Hong Kong and Singapore. We have properties in Japan, di ba? Kumusta na po yung mga yon?
I think we have... yes, sir.
Secretary.
Senator, let me say that let's leave Japan alone because anybody tries to move on that one, it's got to be hell on earth. Every administration I have served in, everybody's trying to sell that. Wonderful thing. Okay? It's not. I don't care who asks for it. I don't care who expects to make money out of it. It will never happen. That's a memorial of what we suffered in World War II. And I don't give a damn who has the authority to sell that. That's what I can assure. Let's look for other things to sell, but not Tokyo.
Yes. Tama po yun. So, when we pay, of course, there are taxes due on the property. Where in your budget do you put the taxes that we pay for our properties overseas?
May I answer that since nobody seems to know? But I could just a guess. When I was with President Estrada, Siyaso would always tell me that Tokyo generates the most money, and in fact, many embassies around Asia depend for funding somehow through the revenues of Tokyo. Unless Xiaosun was lying to me, but why should he? I was just Arab's guy, but and he was a highly respected Secretary of Foreign Affairs and highly loved by the president. So that's what I know. Japan generates a lot of money and helps support the rest of the ambassadorial system. So please, can we have a real answer here?
Asik
Mr.
Maila,
Chair-
please, Your Honor. We recognize Asik Maila. Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. For the most part, sir, since it's recognized as a government property, it's usually tax-free, but there are some areas that would require like local taxes, like community taxes. So those are that will form part of the MOE expenditure of the post. But there's really just few where posts or which have properties are levied some form of tax.
Yes, so yes, thank you for that. At least you're on top of that item and we are not delinquent. And because narinig ko kanina yung exchange that the secretary doesn't want us to be delinquent even in siguro membership in international organizations, etc. But for the information of the secretary, we supported your position, your consistent policy that the Philippine government properties in Japan are not for sale. Andiyan po yun, reported out by the committee, the plenary.
Thank you so much for holding on for the Filipino people. That reminder, that recompense for what we suffered, and I'm not gonna allow anybody to make money out of that.
And we made of record that no offers from private entities shall be entertained by any DFA office or foreign service post. So I hope the committee captured
Yes,
your position, Mr. Secretary.
absolutely, and thank you so much.
Pero okay, so siguro in one of our briefings na lang siguro yung what do we intend to do with the properties, how to make them siguro economically productive properties for the Republic of the Philippines. Well, merong sandali po, I just open there is an increase in the budget of the Presidential Commission on Visiting Forces, a more than 60% increase. Is this correct? And may we know why? What's the difference between year 2021 and 2022? Why the big increase?
Well, if I may, I don't know. That is an attached agency.
Yes, I think the head is present, as mentioned earlier.
Yes, Your Honor. I'm ready to answer that.
Yes, sir. Para lang alam po natin.
Actually, let me go over our story. Effective 29 November 2019, the PCBF was transferred from the Office of the President to DFA as an attached agency. So our budget for 2020 was still piggyback with the budget of the Office of the President. So for 2020, they were the ones administering our PS, and our MOE was given only through DFA. So for 2020, the budget is 28.92 million. That is only for MOOE. So when we already went to 2021, dinagdag na sir yung PS namin. From the Office of the President, binigay na yung aming PS na 18.335 million.
Okay, nagbalanse na. Okay, I get it. So 28 plus 18, 40 something na, 47, 46.
Oo, for ano. So
Thank you.
sige sir. Thank you sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So that clearly explains it. Okay, nakuha ko na po. The department has unobligated allotments, 4.5 billion for the year 2020. Is that correct or not correct? And what happened here?
Your Honor, may we call on ASEC Milo, please? Thank you.
Yes, sir, for 2020, the appropriations that was not obligated amounted to 4.140 billion. That's correct. But as we all know, 2020 was a difficult year for everyone. So with the pandemic, there were a good number of projects had to be either discontinued, partly because of the situation that there are minimal movements, you cannot travel, you cannot and you cannot start repair work, etc. So that was largely because of the impact of the pandemic. Also, part of the reason is that while there are NCAs released to the agency, sometimes we don't use the NCA anymore because we won't have Phoenix to transfer the funds to the post. The department has authority to use its collections abroad. So a part of if you note the total obligations of the department is about 18 billion of the appropriations. 12 billion was utilized NCA. The rest were actually from collections abroad.
Sige ma'am, para po maintindihan ko, so yung 4.5 billion coming from the 2020, nagamit po natin yon. Ultimately, nagamit din po.
Hindi po, sir. Yung NCA na yung obligation hindi siya na-obligate kasi hindi natuloy yung projects.
So ano po nangyari sa halagang yon?
Sir, kung unobligated po siya, that forms part of that will revert back to DBM. Diba, sir, hindi siya nagamit ng agency. So,
Okay po.
parang savings of the agency, but
Yes,
actually back to national.
Kasi per information from my staff, for the first half of this year, you have unobligated allotments of 11.1 billion naman. If that's accurate, so you have 1/2 year to make good use of your allotments of your budget. So just a reminder, di pa naman tapos yung taon eh.
Yes, sir. Based on our records, for this year, the total, while we have appropriations amounting to 22.5 billion, the actual allotment na na-release ni DBM just amounted to 20.23 billion. Of that, 12.29 billion has been obligated, so about a 60.74 utilization rate, sir.
As of today.
Sir, as of July pa lang po,
As
sir.
of July. Okay po. So tama. Iba talaga yung figures natin. Iba yung cut-off natin eh.
Yes, sir.
So well, reminder na lang po siguro yan that what we ask for is what we need. At anyway, ganoon naman yata yung opening, yun yung philosophy rin ni Secretary. He will do more with less. Narinig ko kanina. So congratulations to all of you. I still owe you three treaties, Secretary. Malapit na. Nakilusan na yung dalawa. I will hear the third one. So, yan naman po utang ko sa inyo. Apo. Mr. Chairman, that would be all for this afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the time that you've given me.
Thank you.
Mr. Subiri, are you available for, are you going to ask questions, Mr. Subiri, Mr. Floor Leader? Mr. Subiri? And who else? Ms. Binay, Senator Binay? Let me ask a couple of questions, if I may. I'm not going to go to the nitty-gritty of the budget. If I had money, I'd give it all to you. Simple as that. Foreign affairs is one of the most important, if not the most important, along with the Department of Defense. And in line with that, you're always tampering for money. What? How can we take advantage of this supply chain diversification going on? From the U.S. to Japan, all of them are trying to get out of China and trying to uh, reduce dependence on China, and in the process, the Philippines should be at the forefront of trying to get some of those investments, so we can improve our foreign direct investments and at the same time improve our employment, improve our tax revenues, and thus give more money for DFA. Um, we are very, very low in the totem pole. We have only 9 firms. Meantime, Vietnam has 39 firms, and Thailand has 22 firms, and Indonesia, which is farther down the road, has 12 firms, and we're 9. I think that that's something that we have to take a look at. Don't you think so, Mr. Secretary?
I remember because when EDSA, you and I were there, when that happened, you would have thought because as American foreign policy would say, we will not invest in a country like the Philippines, etc., unless you're a democracy. Well, we achieved the democracy, and guess what? The companies that are already there, like Ford and all the others, they moved to Thailand. I don't think they are. You can force them to either stay or go, depending on your desire. They have their own economic and business reasons to move. And the one thing, and I will stand for to be corrected. I remember that when after EDSA, we were darlings of the world. Fine. For 6 months, we were darlings. On the 7th month, we were the pariah of the world. We were attacked by every foreign publication. It turns out I couldn't figure out why. I was with our political advisor, Mark Malloch Brown. He is now a peer of the realm, and he said, "Well, I'm English, so let me check." So he did. He checked with Hong Kong, and then they said, "We want to talk to you guys." That's how they answered. Who was it? The Hong Kong government? Better. It was Jardine Matheson, the owners of Hong Kong. So we went, and when we got there, just walked into the room, and the first thing he says is, "This is payback time." Remember in 1967 when there were Red Guard riots, and you Filipinos, you publishers, and I know you, said your family, all of you were saying Hong Kong's dead with the Red Guard riots, and come to the Philippines. Well, now it's payback. Now we're gonna hit you until everybody leaves you. See, never pick on a country and say leave them. They're hopeless. Come to us. They'll retaliate. You know why? Because they're already rich. Hong Kong was rich enough to punish us. And now China.
That's the point I was trying to make, Mr. Secretary.
Yeah.
The point I'm trying to make is I'm not trying to say leave China.
Mm.
After all, they poached on us. They took FedEx away from us.
Absolutely.
So they could not make a decision on expanding Clark and expanding the airport to Subic. But
Well, I was
I'm
wondering
ready
about
to say, China, we're gonna poach on you. But certainly, there will be corporations leaving, and in fact, they have to go to Vietnam and to go to because the dependence by the world on China as a super factory of products is just not too safe. So there will be some people who will fall out of the tree, and I think we should be ready to get them there. And that's one of the things that I was wondering about. That maybe we can have even the Japanese. We don't have to go to China. All we have to do is go to Japan. After all, we have JPEPA, and I don't know what we have gotten from JPEPA so far. You know, I used to say I would support you, but you have to tell me that well, we're gonna get your nurses, we're gonna get your again. I'm going back to the export our people. Hold the knife by the blade, send your people abroad, and then that is obviously work for us. But I'd like to see our people find their future in our own native land, and that's where I want to see what we can do about this. I'm not trying to charge you with anything. I just want to make sure that we can work with you.
No, I'd really appreciate that. But I'll tell you one thing. You know what? On our own, when the business process outsourcing started, we drew it in, and we were actually a challenger of India. For some reason, that's what we were. So we don't need to take it away. People will come to us, even as the companies that invested in the Philippines under Marcos, they left. When I think because the economic situation abroad had changed, they suddenly realized that we. When I was in government, then I said, I think it's because we are the Detroit of Asia. We are actually an old country. We were the first to have a modern economy. Forget Japan. Japan is unique, but because of that, we became a little bit more expensive, and that's how businessmen at that time thought. Okay, have to pay more, and then we moved to a cheaper place like Bangkok. That's really what happened to us. There were also peace and order problems. Japan has always been a friend of the Philippines, but there was a dark period when the Japanese businessman was kidnapped.
Wakaoji.
Okay, they're very polite, etc., but then suddenly they started to move out.
Well, that's what I mean, Mr. Secretary. You and I have been, you've known each other for a long time. I think, you're one of the secretaries that I think can do it, provided you get a lot of support. I would love to sell our country for investment, except that you really have to also make sure that the people in our own country are of that mind, so we can get the investments in. For example, after COVID, and I said it earlier, we will have COVID will be here. It no longer be a pandemic; it will be endemic to the Philippines and to other countries. So what we need to do is prepare, because after this tumultuous pandemic, people will start looking for investment areas, or maybe they will start first look at and fix up their own backyard before they go out. But I think we should be prepared anyway to try and get some of that fallout, or try to position ourselves, not just wait for them to come here. Of course, the duty is for us to be able to measure up to the challenge. And if we don't measure up to the challenge, we'll be dependent on them wanting to come to us, and that's a long shot.
We have to make ourselves attractive.
That's right.
So
There are no ugly women. There are only women who do not know how to look beautiful.
Okay, Dick. Go down that road. Yeah. But seriously, that's right. We make ourselves attractive. And what we did is, I was in Congress, you were in the Senate. It was the BOI Incentives Act. So that's how we drew it. You know what we got? And I reviewed that. I found out that pizza parlors were getting tax incentives. I said, my God, because pizza just been invented in the Philippines? That's it. I move that we get rid of the incentives, if that's our idea of incentives, to bring in pizza technology.
Well,
that's the problem. It's a good idea to give incentives. It's a bad idea when we do it.
it's the way we operate it, I suppose. But
I don't know.
I would imagine that you have enough economic intelligence, or never mind the economic, you have the intelligence sufficient to tell the president and the Department of Trade, because you have ambassadors all over the place. They can sniff out what's going on and give us a heads up. Are you doing that? I'm sure you are.
An economic diplomacy, yes, we are very aggressively showing what we can give and what we can offer for those who wish to invest in us. That we do, but I think there are more powerful factors out there that keep them where they are or draw them to another country just next door.
Let me get to another point about China disengagement in terms of the diversification of the supply chain, mainly because of this foreign country has not been behaving in accordance with international standards. They're round down our boats. I'm not a China hater. I'm not. I love the Chinese. They're the oldest civilization, or at least one of them, anyway. And unfortunately, the current thinking in government is it's just like Japan. When they got out of the Meiji Restoration and they sunk the Russian fleet and they went on to World War II, got bombed, and then went back and developed a strong economy. That's my model, always have been, and including Korea. No? But the point is, are we going to be able to beat this cycle of famine for our country in terms of investments, or in terms of even getting our people to look at what we can sell abroad, and that's where economic intelligence comes in, and not just mangoes, not just preserves, going up the economic ladder and finding out what kind of development we can do. Uh, you know, these are things that I think, like tourism. I think this is something that I know very very well, but apparently we have not been able to take advantage of that. I'm not looking at you. I'm looking at what has been happening to our country, not only of late but in the past. So really, we need that. Having said that, the developments in Asia are getting to be swift and practically famous. Recently, I just read, I saw at CNN last night, Mr. Biden talking with Mr. Morrison of Australia. They have the Australia-U.S. Alliance without even providing them nuclear technology. But Australia has always been in the South Philippine Sea, West Philippine Sea, and South China Sea. And having said that, they're ratcheting it up, and even UK is coming in, and now they're talking to Singapore. Have there been any overtures, considering that they've now come to us with the VFA, and we have agreed, and I've always agreed about that, not because I want them, but because we we're bereft of our own defense right now, and until we decide to be a China or a Japan, where we strengthen the military by strengthening our economy, we're going to have to rely on alliances like Quad. Where are we on that situation?
Well, on Quad, I hope the rest of you guys have been working so hard, but Senator Gordon and I are old friends. I'll tell you about Quad. Quad came out and saying that we would affiliate ourselves with them, but they put out the photograph of the defense ministers of the Quad. I did see Del Lorenzana. I really cursed them. I said, "How dare you speak as to what direction we will go? Just because you're Quad doesn't mean you're suddenly attractive." Second, what we face, and I have said this in the Asia Society, we cannot always rely on taking advantage of a conflict, seems to be, between the United States and China. Because Lee Kuan Yew, the wisest man, I think, in the century, said, "You be careful." Okay, he said, when two elephants fight, that's China and the United States, there goes the grass. But when two elephants make love, there goes the forest. He said, I see a future alliance between the United States and China because they have this thing. They are an entrepreneurial race. And I'm always on the lookout, and I've told the Americans that you're not going to get us to declare against China when I know the slightest suggestion that perhaps some cooperation. They've already talked, President Biden has already talked to President Xi, and something concrete came out of it, which is, I think, at this point, non-recognition of the generals in Yangon. So obviously, and part of this I attribute to us because that's how we talk to the Americans. You know, there was a time when you made China, you invested in China because you thought you could use a stronger and richer China to balance the Soviet Union. Well, the Soviet Union imploded all by itself, and that left China full of American dollars. And the thing with the Chinese is they're really smart. You give them a little, they make so much more out of it. That's what you have out there. And we're not getting drawn into anything because we want a green card. I don't. Okay, so that's our foreign policy will be, Duterte is correct, independent. And we've gotten more respect out of that so that we are not taken for granted than ever in the history of this republic.
Nobody says that we have to be an
I'll tell you where we really got
be a vassal of any country.
I should be the last one to say it. But when Senator Marcos's father, martial law, suddenly turns to Russia at the height of the Cold War, usually you get assassinated. But no, he went there, and then he turns around and he recognizes China. See?
Yeah.
And he was being subjected to criticism within the United States. But he took the chance.
The Americans are not angels, and neither is Chinese. We have to
Exactly.
really look into ourselves and see how we can position ourselves to be a respected country by our own
That's right.
sweat
Yeah.
and toil. But again, there are situations such as the new China maritime law, and I really am very concerned about that. There are situations where they're putting islands, making islands out of rocks that stick out to the ocean at low tide.
That's right.
And made airfields out of them. And certainly, I'm sure you guys talked with him, Senate Secretary Lorenzana. You were together in the States last week.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
I hope that these are. I know that you're a very responsible person, Secretary of Foreign Affairs, and I agree with you that we must be independent. But again, what sort of advice will you give our leaders or the Senate how to deal with these things? Because we cannot just be relying on their tender mercies or their tender,
You're
you
correct
know,
about that.
relations. We cannot rely on that.
I would be guided by Lee Kuan Yew. Always watch out for your own personal interests and be careful of enemies, so-called outside. One day they become friends, and then where are you? That actually happened to me. Dick, we're old friends. There was a very big Chinese businessman, and he was a good man, as far as I was concerned. But the Spaniards in San Miguel didn't like him, so they would always, always hit him, and so I hit the Ayalas. You know what that Chinese guy said? Teddy boy, you are a midget. This is a fight between giants. One day, you take my side. One day, I will be friends with the other giant, and you will be my enemy. So be careful. You're small. We are big. That's it. You just have to be careful that we don't get dragged into fights that they can settle. Very
You
easy.
see,
They have so much to offer each other. We don't.
I think our poverty is an absence of choice, even with foreign policy. And unless we start really creating our own sources of
It's true.
world that we can make us ourselves independent and buy our own hardware, we're not going to be anywhere. So how come after 7 decades of democracy, we've not been able to do that? I really think. I mean, I'm just musing and
Sure.
musing with I suppose the monotonous languor, if you will, borrowing a phrase from
But, I
the
think
Lord's
you
Day.
must also think that what's the alternative to democracy? The same face year after year after year there because there are no more elections and never be replaced? No. At least with democracy, you can keep replacing the wrong guy.
Yeah.
That's one thing. In fact, that was brought up to me by Blinken. I was saying, what's this talk about democracies? I said, you're going to start gauging democracies. I said, as far as I know, a democracy is where fair and free elections are held. And one day they bring in a right winger, and the next day they bring in a left winger and the centrist. But that's democracy. Anything more than that, oh, we didn't like your choice, America says. I said, what you do is, I'm not trying to be a scholar. I told him, I said, did you watch the movie Libertine with, what's his name, guy, Johnny Depp? That's the Earl of Rochester. And he said, when he saved the son of the king from impeachment, he said, how can you impeach the son? The remedy of impeachment, he told Parliament, is to remove a king. He's not even a king, he's just a son. So what you're doing instead is interfering in the succession. Once you do that, that's the end of monarchy. Is that what you want? Now, in the case of democracies, I told Blinken, you're entitled to choose, but no one is entitled to tell you, hey, that's the wrong choice. No, if he gets the most votes, he is the democratically elected president. I can't find any other standard than that. One day, ultra liberal, next time, conservative. And by the way, for the ultra liberal Obama, I think if you look at the history of what they did in Iraq and Afghanistan, that guy was not a sissy. He really poured those bombs down on those countries. So that's what liberalism could. In fact, I'm his dad knows that. When I was old enough for the participation in the Vietnam War, my God, that's why I never say that the U.S. lost in Vietnam. They punished that country so severely. No other insurgency ever happened after the Americans left Vietnam. They were not interested in occupying. They don't like that country. I don't even think they like the people. They're happy with everything from Texas and the Rio Grande all the way up to the North Pole. They're happy.
Almost occupied by the Chinese, Mr. Secretary. They gave the Chinese a bloody nose, but they never occupied. So it blasted the dominant theory. that Vietnam falls, the others will fall, right?
You want
Up there, they never sought for hegemony with other countries.
yes, that is one thing about the hegemony of the United States. It does not seek to own the world. It just says, these are my rules. These rules are as good for you as for me. That's all.
Yeah.
But you challenge us, and I can assure you, it will be hell or the howling wilderness. And you know, they haven't forgotten Vietnam. And the beauty of it is, who revived Vietnam again? I'm an old man. Dick, you and I have the same people we know. These are the guys who fought there. And they came back after they devastated that place and they helped to rebuild Vietnam. Why? I asked one of them. He says, because I fought here. And that's the only ground of affection. And that's enough for me to open Vietnam back to the rest of the world. If you look at these guys that you and I know, they fought in Vietnam and they reopened Vietnam. They have been taught a lesson. Don't ever fight an insurgency against an American ally, because there is a price to pay, and we will make you pay it, and we did. That's why it was a victory. No other country followed. No other domino fell. It's what the Americans are good at. They're really good at fighting.
All right. Last question. I had always provided for the Foreign Service Institute in terms of language proficiency. How is that getting along? Are we getting more Chinese speakers, Arabic speakers, and
So
experts?
I was surprised that there seemed to have been a number of people who went to Cairo to study Arabic. That's a very difficult language, and many more who are studying Chinese. So that one is working. I just had one suggestion with your colleague, Congresswoman Legarda. I said perhaps we should find a way to recognize those who are already proficient because of where they were born and where they grew up, like children of OFWs in the Middle East. Their proficiency in Arabic is unbelievable. So is there a way to integrate them into the DFA? We'll have to look at the whole law again. How to make them, I don't want them here as consultants, second-class citizens. I don't work with second-class citizens. If they work for DFA, they work for DFA as regulars. And
That's
the way,
correct.
yeah.
Actually, there are any number of children of OFWs. I've met some of them in Jordan who speak perfect Arabic and speak perfect Tagalog. And if you can bring them back to our country and have them be part of our country, after all, they have the choice to become a citizen. But it's important that we get these people who have lived there, know the culture, know I've always gotten along with our Muslim brothers and in the Middle East and even in our own country. But it's important that we come out with a team of experts so that we would know how to read their newspapers, know the mega trends, know what's happening. And I think that that's important. That's why we should continue that program and start even younger. So that
absolutely. And it's my hope to create an Arab Bureau of experts, like the ones the British had. They knew what was happening in the Middle East because they had a core of Oxford, Cambridge students who knew Arabic in and out.
Right.
One day we'll have that, and there's not much time left, but I hope we can establish the beginning of that.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's it. I think that we've gone from geopolitics. So, Senator Marcos, you have a question? Are you
No,
either
it's not a question.
or you're going to have a question?
No, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to request, I think it may be of interest, especially for some of our re-electionist colleagues, to get an update on the overseas absentee voting. There's a great deal of concern that whereas 1.3 are registered or otherwise qualified, a mere 300,000 voted. So we'd like to improve on that statistic for 2022. But we know that DFA as well as the COMELEC are hard pressed to perform under the pandemic protocols. So siguro update na lang ang hihingin namin. Yes?
Ma'am, actually, it isn't just the difficulty. One is in the Middle East, when all of us, right, Dick, we were the ones who passed the automated election law. I wrote that damn thing, and I did the DFA because I only trusted the DFA to conduct. I certainly wouldn't trust the COMELEC. I'm not crazy yet. So we had that, and then we were so excited and deployed it in the Middle East. Turns out, the Middle East, it's like more than 3 people is considered illegal assembly. So that's, yeah, and then of course in the United States it took a while because there are distances. But more and more are participating, and so far, you always hear from the losers that they were cheated in that particular one, but whenever they win, they don't follow it up anyway. So no, I think it's a good system. I think it works, and we hope the attendance will increase. I've certainly seen the DFA in Singapore, Hong Kong, wow, really fully deployed. They usually come in with the figures faster than here. And now we just need to convince them. And this is one thing that we sent out. The Americans, well, I don't know, should I say this in the program? But let me put it this way. Under American constitutional law, I think it only allowed one citizenship. But they do not look into our records. I always tell people, if you are a dual citizen, don't worry, we don't share this with immigration, INS, we don't. So please do so. And more people are doing that. And in this pandemic, perhaps the only little silver lining, they can't get in unless they have reacquired their Philippine citizenship. And our numbers of dual citizens in quotes has risen tremendously because of that. No, I don't wish that was the reason, but it's there. We're getting there. But who knows? Maybe one day we'll have it even locally.
Paragire raising her hand earlier. Did you want to speak up? Our Lady of Lourdes?
Yes, Your Honor, no. I wanted to say something actually about your question about JPEPA and supply diversification.
You handle the
But
Japanese
I think
She handles economic diplomacy.
Economic diplomacy.
Okay.
yes, sir. Well, on JPEPA, the first review of JPEPA, the benefits of the Philippines from JPEPA is still being scheduled. But if we look at the statistics, tourist arrivals from Japan have increased by 6% over the past 10 years. JPEPA, of course, became effective for us in 2008. And in terms of trade, total trade between the Philippines and Japan, it has increased by almost 4% average annual growth rate. And Japan has remained to be the largest investor in the Philippines. So I guess that should be part of the benefits that the Philippines has gained from JPEPA. Now, on sir, your question about supply diversification during the height of the U.S. China trade skirmish, there were a lot of excuse me, companies based in China that wanted to relocate elsewhere because the products, the goods that they produce have been affected by the tariff increases, tariff war between the two countries. We tried to attract also companies to relocate in the Philippines as a complementary base. Not really as their main HQ headquarters, but as a complementary base. Because we believe that we still cannot compete with China. It has a huge market. So we would have wanted these companies to have a second base, and we were hoping that they would invest in the Philippines. As you mentioned, we were only able to attract a few companies, but other countries like Vietnam and Thailand attracted more. I think there are several reasons to this. One is proximity. Mas malapit po ang Vietnam and Thailand to China, so it was easier for them to relocate. And the other one is the system of government. For example, in Vietnam, there are restrictions on freedom of association and freedom of assembly. So, konti lang po yung mga labor strikes. compared to the Philippines, of course. We, of course, promote and protect human rights, including labor rights in the Philippines. I think they also were able to provide more incentives or attraction to attract investments relocating, investors relocating from China. For example, Vietnam provided an industrial estate specifically for relocators from China. And Thailand did the same. Talagang may special parang economic zone sila for these locators. In our case, of course, they can relocate in many of our economic zones. And also, mas ano po, yung cheaper labor sa Vietnam than the Philippines. So that is also
Sorry,
one of the
Lord,
attractions of
Secretary Lourdes.
Vietnam.
Sorry,
So
I
these are
heard all that cheap labor, cheap electricity, and all that, but
yes.
I've never made that defeat me when I was selling Subic to investments. I think that what is important is our rich, ugali ng Pilipino na masisipag. That's how we sold Subic. The volunteers were working without pay, and if you come in, that's why we got a Japanese zone there. We got a Taiwanese zone, and that's why I wanted to put up rich. We should have, and I'm still refiling it again. It was approved on both houses. Somehow the president vetoed it, and you know, Teddy Boy Locsin, secretary, is correct when you say you don't give incentives to McDonald's or people like that. You give incentives to those that will generate a tax base. That's factories. And why are we afraid of that? And look at what they did. They were faster. They were more nimble. The Vietnamese set up zones, and we could have put up that zone. If you look at the picture that I'm trying to show you on the screen, you will see that it would have gone to Subic, Clark, and Manila with 3 airports and 3 seaports, and we would have gotten all the land there, and we could always have come over here and develop, several hectares here that the government will do, and then with, including generating, you have new roads and highways that have been there for a long time that has never grown into factories. When you create infrastructure, you should create factories right away because that's what it's for. But obviously, hindi nangyari, and they stayed inside Subic, they stayed inside Clark, but they have not gotten out with wild abandon in Tarlac, all the way up to Pangasinan, all the way up to Pampanga. And that's why I'm saying I asked that question principally because we are anticipating that. And so I'm glad it was music to my ears when you said they had special industrial estates just to take these people to come in. Because dito, pag tinanong mo yung investor, saan ka lulugar o kayo, at tanongin kayo sa embassy, saan kami lulugar dyan? Kailangan may ituturo kayo dyan. One of the most memorable things that I ever heard from the Foreign Affairs is when they said, sir, when you put up Subic, now we had something to sell. We had something definite, something that is enclosed, something that we can invite people in with infrastructure and everything. Never forgot that. That's why, again, I wish we have had more foresight and more, entrepreneurship. I'm still trying to do that again, and if I don't get it passed, then that's another missed opportunity. I just wanted to raise that point because JPEPA should be our biggest source of investments because the Japanese want to come down here. All they want is security. When I was selling it in the Philippines, Japan with Jun Siaso, I would be told, no, it's not safe in your country. We had Wakaoji, he was kidnapped. And I said, that's right. We have once in a while, we have those kidnappers, but you have the Yakuza. I told him that. And I said, but we don't have sarin gas, in our subways. In fact, we don't even have subways. And that was that. All right. And that's how we got Jaido. Jetro of Japan is doing that right now. They're looking at possibilities. So I would suggest our Japanese ambassador get in touch with Jetro, with the Department of Trade. And, delegations don't have to go there now. You can do Zoom and you can do all these presentations. And we can do that. I mean, the only thing that I didn't like you said, is mahirap or something like that. We Filipinos always say it's difficult. Of course, nothing good is easy to get. And that's going to be the end of my statement. Thank you very much. I learned some
Thank
things
you.
from you from Thailand and and Vietnam. And what he told me is that we have to be nimble. We have to be fast. We have to anticipate what's the next round. Like some people in this country are quite fast. When the pandemic started, they saw an opportunity to steal the people's money in a very fast way. I'm not going to elaborate anymore because I think I've gotten some people out of their lucid interval at the moment. All right? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. With that,
Any
Mr.
motion to
Chairman,
submit the budget?
are we ready to endorse the budget of the DFA to the plenary, please?
I think so. Are you making a motion?
Yes, may I make a motion therefore that the budget of the DFA is endorsed to the Mother Committee and thereafter to plenary.
Yes. In that case, the budget of the DFA, there are no objections. Senator Pimentel, are you in accord with Senator Marcos?
I will just go with the flow. I did not hear it exactly, Mr. Chairman, but
No,
is it
we're just passing it at subcommittee level
approved? Approved.
All right.
because the secretary is going back to New York.
Motion to be seconded. The budget of the DFA.
Are we supporting the 3 billion additional budgetary motion for reconsideration? Is that part of the motion of the Senator Marcos? The 3
If you
billion.
will add it, Chairman of Foreign Affairs, I will support and second the.
Yes, if our subcommittee through our chairman can look for ways and means to grant as much of the tier 1 3 billion additional budget that the department is asking for.
Let's put it this way: whatever they're asking for will come back to us by way of passport income, consular fees and all that. And I've always been a risk taker. I can trust people that I know will do a good job. So I think that we pass this, and if there's any questions there, then we put the DBM on the spot when they come on the floor. Because right now, I don't want to be rejected by these guys. These guys are no longer, at times, they should really be thinking about what the practical things in life are, so that make things work instead of being in the way of progress. Like I said earlier, my prefatory remarks were, if I had my own way, all these things that you're asking, you probably get and more. So I'm ready to do that. It's not being reckless. I think they need it, and I think we should support it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I hope I will get the help of
information requested
Committee on Foreign Affairs, and of course the powerful senator from the Ilocos Solid North, Ilocos, Slovakia. And having said that, there are no objections. The budget of the DFA and its attached agencies are submitted to the plenary with the coletilla. The two folks here, Senator Pimentel and Senator Marcos, will help me try to get the budget from the DBM, and we will look for sources of that fund, of those funds.
Thank you.
No objection. The budget of the DFA and its attached agencies are submitted to the plenary. Thank you very much, and I thank all of you folks. And I hope that I wish you well and stay safe and stay strong in your belief that this country will someday be great like the Japanese. We're as big as the Japanese. We're surrounded by an ocean. We're like the British. We're separate from the rumbles of the Asian mainland. And I think it's about time that we take our place. Hopefully. Hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you.
Folks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, po.
Mr. Chair, long day, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless everyone. God bless the Philippines.
Bless you.